Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. This is for our 2017 and 18 School Grants for Healthy Kids School Breakfast Grant. Tips for applying. I'll go ahead and get started. We are recording this webinar, so know that we will be following up with all the information shortly. You should receive everything tomorrow. My name is Ellen Dillon. I am the Senior Manager of School Breakfast Programs for Action for Healthy Kids. I am joined today by my colleague, Christina Shelton, who is Action for Healthy Kids Maryland, D.C., and Virginia State Coordinator, and who also assists me on our breakfast work. Christina will be answering questions throughout the webinar and will also help facilitate our Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have questions, make sure you shoot them into the question box, and we'll go over where you can find that in just a moment. So let's just make sure everyone is all set. You can be listening and or viewing the webinar. You can listen via your telephone or your speakers on your computer, but know that everyone is muted by default just based on the number of attendees to our webinar today. You can submit your question. You just need to do that on this right-hand panel where it says questions, and you just put it in and it will come to Christina and she'll answer you. And if she doesn't have the answer, she'll let you know, and or make sure to, we'll either answer it during the webinar or as a follow-up email. I will follow up with you regarding your question. The link to the recording and any of the reference handouts, including the application and any other information that might be helpful to you, will be sent out following the call. So you can expect that probably in your email tomorrow, by the end of day tomorrow. All right, let me go over the agenda real quick so that we all know what our plan is looking like for today. So first, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Action for Healthy Kids in case you haven't worked with us in the past, and the work that we do with schools. We'll then briefly cover all of our 17-18 grant opportunities because we have more than just our breakfast grants, but then we'll spend some time on our breakfast grants, what types of projects we will be funding and the amounts of funding available to you, and then walk through really specific steps on applying. We'll go over important deadlines, give you some strategies and tips for applying, and then talk about the different technical assistance that we do have to offer to you, both in the application stage as well as in the funding stage. So let's go ahead and make sure we get ourselves moving here. And we will pause periodically for questions, and we will also make sure that in the end we leave time for questions and answers. All right. So first off, who is Action for Healthy Kids? For those of you who don't know, I want to just make sure you are a little bit more aware of who we are by providing some more background. So Action for Healthy Kids' vision is a world in which every kid is healthy and active and ready to learn. As an organization, we mobilize school professionals, families, and communities to take actions that lead to healthy eating, physical activity, and healthier schools where kids are thriving. We are made up of moms, dads, teachers, students, school and community leaders, and school wellness experts and professionals who have banded together to make and create healthier learning environments for our children. We believe that everyone has a part to play in ending the nation's childhood obesity epidemic. Our programs, tools, and resources make that possible. We were funded in 2002 by former Surgeon General David Satcher. At that time, he was the first to coin the phrase of childhood obesity and it becoming an epidemic. So at this point, we've been in formation for about 15 years, and we're more than 120,000 members and constituents in our network. We've been working with schools and funding schools, especially around school breakfast, since 2009. And we really are an organization that partners with dozens of professional associations, government agencies, and corporations at the national and local level. But why are we talking about schools, and why are we focusing on schools? As we just mentioned, Action for Healthy Kids focuses on schools, but why? So schools reach most children and adolescents in a community, and they provide kids with opportunities to practice healthy behaviors. Kids spend around 1,200 hours per year in school, so reaching them is really much easier to go through schools. Teachers, administrators, and school staff are key role models. So are parent volunteers in the school. Curriculum standards for health usually include nutrition and physical education. And shouldn't our policies, practices, and climate reflect those standards rather than conflict with them? And schools show kids what we value and what is important in our community. So these are all some good talking points for you as you encounter skeptical members of your school community or are struggling to gain administrative support. These points can reinforce why school health and wellness simply makes sense. And today we're going to really focusing more on school breakfast and eating better, but it's really key that we all understand the importance of why this happens and why we want to focus on the learning connection, because when we're talking with administrators and our parents, we want to really be able to make sure that they are well understood how important healthy eating is, and especially around school breakfast. So another way to gain support is by connecting your efforts to the learning connection. This is that kids who are healthy and have access to regular physical activity and eating better learn better. I mention this because our school grants are not just about making kids healthier, they're also about helping kids to be better equipped and better learners. And so we know that kids who eat better achieve academically. Studies have shown that undernourished kids tend to have low energy, are often irritable, and have difficulty concentrating. They are also scoring lower on vocabulary, reading comprehension, and arithmetic tests. So by offering school breakfast and making sure school breakfast is more accessible to our students, we are also able to have greater impact in the academic world and in the classroom too. Also, the Learning Connection shows that students who are moving more are also doing better in school as well. So if we look at these two brain scans, the left brain scan is an aggregate image of multiple students after 20 minutes of sitting quietly. As you can see, the brain is what we call cool. That's just not a lot of activity happening there, which we know is what students often are doing who have been sitting for long periods of time, whether it be in class, reading, or working on math. And if they don't have that opportunity for physical activity to stimulate the brain, they're struggling. So if you take a look at the brain on the right-hand side, you're seeing a warmer, more active brain. There's a lot more brain activity happening after 20 minutes of walking versus 20 minutes of sitting quietly. So I found these visuals are really showing a lot of powerful images of ways that we can make the case that regular physical activity at school is important in helping students focus on that work. And we're talking about this today, even though we're talking about our breakfast grants, because we do have grants that impact physical activity opportunities at school, and I'll highlight them briefly. So, as I mentioned, we do have for our 17-18 school grants for healthy kids. We will be awarding about 1,100 schools grants for the next year. So we'll have about 600 Game On grants and about 500 breakfast grants. Our grant sizes range from $500 to $3,000. And schools that can be awarded are any combination of K through 12. So if you're a K through 5 or K through 3, you can apply. K through 12 doesn't mean your school has to be a K through 12. It just means that you're serving students. You're not a college school that is applying, or you are not a preschool-only program. Your preschool could be part of an elementary school, but we do not fund daycare and preschool programs. So we also do not fund other outside organizations. So if you're another 501c3 organization, we would not be able to fund you. We would have to fund the school, and if the school was going to work with you and provide funding to you, they could do that. We do fund PTOs and PTAs and other parent groups. and school health teams as part of this project and as part of our grant award. So, as
hey,
I
Ellen.
mentioned, sure,
Ellen,
you're going to pause?
I'm sorry to jump in. I had a couple people who are saying that they are not able to see your screen, and I just wanted to make sure everything from your end was looking okay, that it wasn't just a few people.
We're going to pause for a second, and if you are able to see the screen, it should say 17-18 school grants for healthy kids, Game On grants,
Okay.
and breakfast grants.
Okay.
Christina, you should be able to see that because you are, as an organizer, if you are able to see it, if you would just put in the chat box or in the questions, just say yes, and we'll know that it's being seen properly.
Yep. I'm seeing I have other people saying they can see it, and I just wanted to double check with you. Sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to make sure we keep going before people weren't able to see it.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Thank you for letting me know that. Absolutely. And if somebody is having a problem seeing the screen, just let us know. Or if you're having a problem with hearing anything, let us know too, and we'll make sure we do a quick check. So we do have Game On grants. Game On is our signature program, and it focuses on helping schools eat better and move more. Game On is a framework that allows schools to kind of pick and choose activities and strategies, and it's around a six-step process to help schools become healthier places. So the goal is that we have Game On grants to increase physical activity initiatives as well as nutrition, and we also have a Game On parent grant. So if you're interested in increasing physical activity and nutrition opportunities for students, and or you have a parent group that wants to take on some of these activities, then we have already held our Game On grant yesterday, but you can access the archived webinar on our grants page and on our webinars page and be able to gain that information. You can apply for both a Game On grant and a breakfast grant. The two are separate, so if you could get both grants depending on your project plans, but if your project plan for Game On nutrition includes breakfast, you might want to amend that, since breakfast, you'll be receiving a separate breakfast grant for that. So your nutrition activity for Game On could include taste tests, while your breakfast grant might include changing a program to breakfast in the classroom, for example. So our breakfast grants, we have what we're calling multiple funding opportunities. You can be applying for one school, or you can be applying for multiple schools within your district. And you do need to, if it's a one school grant, you need to be applying for universal breakfast, meaning that you are providing breakfast at no charge for all students, and incorporating an alternative breakfast model. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So we are thankful for our funders. Right now we have our funders that are on board and have all the information signed off on, and here are the various logos. And so we're really thankful to have all of our partnerships in place at this point with these funders. And we're always looking for additional funding opportunities to be able to offer as many opportunities for funding to our schools as we can. So let's go in and talk a little bit more about our breakfast grant. So if you've worked with us in the past, or perhaps applied for a breakfast grant in the past, you were either having to choose what type of application to apply for. And this year what we've done is we've created one application, and depending on your project plan and where you currently are, will help to determine what project or what funding opportunity is available to you. We have a typo here, so sorry, fix that one before we send this out. There are multiple projects with varying funding, and it ranges from $500 to $3,000, and we'll kind of go through all of those in just a second. And it's determined by the need of your school, what your current breakfast programming is, and your current breakfast participation, as well as your plan. So, bottom line is there are certain best practices that we're looking for, and there are certain best practices that really have the greatest impact on students. And so we're looking for programs and projects that are implementing best practices. So the first being that moving breakfast out of the cafeteria is really an important strategy for increasing breakfast participation. There are many reasons why schools and students are not seeing the participation that they could be seeing at their schools, and it's not just because of their free and reduced level, or because many schools that are already offering free breakfast or very high need schools, high free and reduced schools, aren't seeing the breakfast participation that they could be seeing. So many students aren't eating because they can't get to school on time. Their bus schedules or their parents or their walking don't allow them to get to school with enough time to physically eat breakfast. There's also a great deal of stigma around eating a school breakfast. The perception is that only, quote unquote, the poor kids are eating breakfast at school, versus lunch, where all students are in the cafeteria at the same time, and it doesn't really matter who's eating or who's buying, because it's not the same level of scrutiny that kids are feeling. The cafeteria is hard to get to in a lot of schools, and students are often wanting to hang out elsewhere with their friends, or play with their friends on the playground, or in a basketball court, or in the gym. So going to the cafeteria to get breakfast is a bit more of a burden and a challenge for them. And so breakfast offered at no cost will help to remove stigma of only those students who qualify as those eating it. And it makes it easier for tracking purposes too. So it just makes it's just an easier process if you're able to do that. But we do know not all schools are able to offer it free for all students. But we do want to make sure that this is considered a best practice, and this is one of our large buckets of our funding stream is around those schools that are already either implementing it or will be implementing breakfast at no charge for all students next year. So while we recommend a school is at 60% free and reduced, should be applying for this grant or for these types of grants, it is not a firm guideline, because we know some schools can break even and do fiscally well if they have less than 60% free and reduced. They can still make it work. It really just depends on the costs related to providing breakfast for all students. And we can provide some more resources to you that helps you to make those decisions. So sometimes when schools are at 55% or even a little bit less, they might want to go to free breakfast for all students, just because it does make your overall impacts better too. Okay, so as I mentioned, we do have different projects that are available, and we have different funding amounts that are available. So it must include an alternative breakfast model. So that's all of our grants must include an alternative breakfast model, so that way we are getting as many breakfasts to students in the best manners that we can. And an alternative model could be, as we've looked at yet previously, on the previous screen, was breakfast in the classroom. That is the best model. Or grab and go to the classroom. So if we had to kind of tier from best to next best, that would be the next option that we would say is highly recommended to increase breakfast participation. We also know that second chance breakfast can be a great way of, especially at the high school level or the secondary school level, of impacting students and allowing them to eat a little bit later, because we know that sometimes they're starting really early in schools, and having that opportunity to eat a little bit later appeals to students who might have gotten up really early and might not have wanted to eat prior to school starting or at the start of the school day. So as I mentioned, any schools that are between pre-KK through 12 and that are part of a current elementary, middle, or high can apply for this grant. All states are eligible, so it's not focused on only specific states. You must participate in the National School Breakfast Program. And what that means is that even if you're a parochial school, private school, charter school, as long as you're participating in the National School Breakfast Program, you can apply. If you're choosing not to participate in that program, this grant wouldn't really benefit you in the way that we intended, because we want you to be able to maximize your reimbursements, and using this grant is designed to help you either get started with equipment costs or to expand what you're currently doing in order to increase your participation and therefore creating sustainability through your reimbursements that you would receive through your National School Breakfast Program. Christine, I'm just going to pause real quick. Are there any specific questions related to anything up to this point that we need to answer?
No, we're good on my end. Nothing yet.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have a couple different projects that you can choose to apply for. We have a startup or an implementation project. This is designed for schools that are starting an alternative model and incorporating breakfast at no charge for all their students. The award for this grant is $3,000 per school, and it's designed to help you purchase equipment that will make your program successful. If we look at the picture on the right-hand side here, it could go towards insulated bags, it could go to carts. I mean, how cute are these little radio flyers that this child is dragging along to be able to take that to breakfast in the classroom. It can go towards cleanup costs related to a breakfast in the classroom, or if you're having grab and go to the classroom, additional trash cans for your custodial staff. It can go to grab and go bags to be able to put your food into clear bags so students can grab it and take it with them to their classroom. This is designed for schools that have a current participation of less than 50%. Our goal is to help you reach 65% or greater breakfast participation in that first initial year. And that, to us, if you are implementing breakfast at no cost and a solid alternative breakfast model with breakfast in the classroom, grab and go to the classroom, or something along those lines, you should and will reach those targets. Next, we have what we're calling marketing or expansion projects. So we do know that there are schools in our network, either you've been funded with us in the past, or maybe you're already implementing these programs. You're already implementing an alternative model. You already offer breakfast at no cost. And so maybe you might not need a lot of equipment, but you really do need to kind of get yourself a boost in your participation. We have awards of $1,000 per school. You do not have to have been a previously funded school, but many of our previously funded schools are eligible for this grant. The idea is that you are either going to purchase equipment that you might need. Maybe you are doing grab and go and you need another kiosk or a cart. Or maybe you need, you want to expand your breakfast in the classroom from just cold breakfast to adding hot breakfast, and you need some more insulated bags. Or maybe you're ready to do greater menu options and creating taste tests for your students. So there's lots of things that you could do under this grant for that $1,000, but it does require you to be at a certain level already in your participation and or be able to reach our target impact goal of 80% or greater in participation. So if you are a startup grant, you're really not going to apply for this grant because you would already need to be purchasing equipment and things like that. So you would want that greater funded grant, and this one is not as highly funded because you shouldn't have to need as much to continue to move that participation level from what's already a very solid participation to a higher participation. And then lastly, for schools that really are doing well, we're calling this our Family Engagement or Sustainability Project. You might really not need a whole lot, and it's really just an opportunity to highlight what you're already doing with your families, engage your families around school breakfast, and or sustain where you currently are. And schools are being awarded $500 grants to create some type of family engagement or continue what they're currently doing with their breakfast program, or to fine-tune it a little bit to be able to maintain the current level of participation. So schools that are between 75 and 90% can apply for this grant, and it's to reach 85% or greater, or maintain if you are coming in between that 85 and 90%. So all of these grants can be found on our grant application. You will just need to determine where you are to be able to determine what your best project plan should be and how to go forward with writing your project plan. Now, we do have an opportunity if you are not able to offer breakfast at no cost. We do have just an alternative breakfast project grant available. This is designed for, maybe you are at that 40 to 50% and offering it in terms of free and reduced, and offering that at free for all students is fiscally a challenge for you, and you're not able to do that for multiple schools. With this grant, you do need to include multiple schools in your application. We are calling this our district project. So you would need to have 5 or more schools within a given district to apply. They don't all have to have the same plan, and they can have differing levels of participation and free and reduced need, but they do you do need to be implementing some type of alternative breakfast project. So we do see that this kind of works out really nicely for maybe some high schools or secondary schools, middle schools, that might not be able to be free for all students, and a district might apply for multiple schools within their district to be able to offer grab and go or breakfast in the classroom or second chance breakfast for those schools. And this impact goal is to increase by 35% over the baseline. Just make sure everybody's really clear on that 35%. It doesn't mean 35 percentage points, because that could really be like doubling participation. You might be at 35 to start, and so we're not saying you're increasing 35 percentage points, but it's 35% over where you started. So let's say you started at 20%. 35% over 20% is about 7.5 percentage points. That becomes a little bit more realistic, and just making sure everybody is really clear on that too. But again, it does require 5 or more schools within a given district to be able to apply. We do also encourage all of our schools to host an Every Kid Healthy Week event. So Every Kid Healthy Week is an event that's held, it's a week during the month of April, and we also allow schools to host events anytime during the month of April to really highlight the work that's being done around school wellness and healthy schools. And it's really not designed to make it a burden or extra work on schools, but just creating a healthy focus on something that might already be taking place at your school. So here are lots of different pictures of activities that were taking place and maybe turned into a healthy spin and incorporating physical activity or breakfast, taste tests, or other types of taste tests to allow students to benefit and families to learn a little bit more about the great things that are happening at your school. So I'm going to pause before we get into what we're looking for and what we're not looking for in terms of grants. Christina, was there anything that we need to answer related to the different grant projects?
No, nothing specific. People are just curious and asking about specific qualifications for their own schools and their own districts. So I've just been encouraging people to connect with us after the call so that we could talk through some of those specifics with them. But nothing, no other greater quick questions have come up yet.
Okay. Great. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of projects we are looking for. So we're calling these our yays. So here's one. Our school is going to implement breakfast in the classroom. We've already established buy-in and agreement from the principal. Since this is a move from our cafeteria to our classrooms, we anticipate a great increase in participation. We love breakfast in the classroom. We love schools that already have said that their principal is supportive of this, because that's important. Having that principal buy-in is key to any successful project, but most importantly when we're moving breakfast in the classroom to breakfast in the classroom. So this would absolutely be something that we would be looking to fund. In an effort to improve our offerings and menu options, we'll hold monthly breakfast taste tests. Okay, there's some positives here too that we really like. And this would be if your school was already at a certain level of participation and was offering an alternative and a breakfast at no charge, and you can absolutely be doing monthly breakfast taste tests with the funds that we provide. And this is really important too. Is once you've changed your model, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to find out what are the best menu options, and being able to do some of those taste tests to help with your menu options is really helpful for both your students and to market your breakfast program. Our breakfast participation is quite high, 85%. We already offer breakfast in the classroom and free breakfast to all students. So we like to introduce our parents to our breakfast program by creating promotion material to be sent home monthly. Great. I like that it's monthly. It's not something that's just a one and done. Hosting a breakfast taste test during back to school night in September, and a parent breakfast during National School Breakfast Week in March. So what's nice about all of these grants projects is that there's something that's ongoing. It's not just to a small group of people, and it is going to be something that can create some sustainability as well. So then we have some projects that we have seen in the past and we weren't able to fund, and want to go through them with you so that you're better understanding of what we aren't looking for. So, you know, if that's what you were thinking you're going to apply for, we can help you to change it. Our school will purchase physical activity equipment so kids can be active during breakfast. Well, that's a really worthy idea. It might not be something that's really going to impact your breakfast participation and is likely not to be a good use of funds. We will pilot a grab and go on Thursdays. Again, love grab and go, but by just offering it on Thursdays isn't really going to create enough of an impact to justify the funds, and it can sometimes really backfire when you only do something once a week or once a month even, where students can't create that that habit forming and be able to participate in it. So it could be that you're doing grab and go every day, and maybe on Thursdays you offer smoothies. That might be a different story. Oops, lost that one. And back to this one on top, you might want to be thinking about applying for the Game On grant if that's what you wanted to do with your project. And lastly, we will purchase additional fruits to provide to students. Well, first off, our funding should not be used for food except when it comes to taste tests. So if you're thinking this is a great way to help pay for the cost related to serving healthier foods or healthier options that are part of your reimbursable meal program, it's not. This is not a good idea for your project because we can't fund food unless you're doing taste tests. So really think about that when you're, thinking about what you want your project to look like. So there are a few steps for applying, and we'll kind of go through them fairly quickly so that I can kind of show you how to apply. The first thing you want to do is on our grant landing page, you're going to want to take the pre-survey eligibility survey. And it really is designed to help you determine what's the best funding project for your school. You might find that even though you were thinking, I really can qualify for that $3,000 and I could spend that on lots of new equipment, that maybe some of our equipment's older, you might not qualify for it because your participation's too high. And so you really might only receive $1,000, and then you can choose how you would like to spend that $1,000. You can purchase more equipment with your $1,000, but you won't be getting the full $3,000 in your grant project. So there is a paper application that you can find on our school grant page, and you can download that and then start preparing it and working with your school health team to, make sure that you answer questions and you have a plan in place. We encourage you to check your character count. This is not your word count. So if you're working in a word processing like Word, Microsoft Word, you can check your character count because there are limits to how many characters you can be entering into different questions. So you will want to check that before you copy and paste and try to submit it. And you want to write your application as if the person reviewing it has no knowledge of what your school is doing and your project. So the more information you can provide, the better off you're going to be. You might have somebody else review it for you, and if you work on this soon enough, and we'll talk about the deadlines in just a minute, but if you work on it soon enough, we can also to provide some review of your projects and your plans too. And so if you're doing a Game On grant, making sure your nutrition and physical activity is reflected in your application. And for your breakfast grant, you're making sure that your breakfast program is really fully developed. And you have to submit your application through our online portal. So if you go to our grant landing page, you can get to the grant, the survey. You can also get to the paper application to download for both breakfast and Game On, and then you can also get to the portal that way as well. So if you are ready to apply, you can click on the Apply Now, and it's going to take you to our school portal. If you've never been to our school portal, the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to register. And to register, you're just going to enter your email, which is your username, which will become your username, and creating a password. And it will create an access login for you. And then once you've logged in, you'll be able to, and then this is what exactly that registration looks like: your name, your email, your password, and then you can just have to confirm your password and you hit submit. And then this is what your home page will look like in the portal. When you come in here, the first thing you're going to want to do is complete your profile by telling us a little bit more about yourself and who you are, and then you can affiliate yourself with your schools. If you're applying for multiple schools, or you're the food service director and you want to apply for more than one school, you can do that by entering in your school district's zip code, and then all of the schools in your district will come up, and you can choose the entire district or parts of your district or just certain schools. And if for some reason a school that you want to apply for has not come up on your list, double check that you're entering in the right zip code, because that's how schools are identified first, is by zip code. So you might want to just double check, Google it real quick, and make sure that you've got the right zip code. And if for some reason your school is not coming up in our system, and we know that sometimes that happens with new schools or charter schools, you just let us know. There is a form that you can fill out on our website, and that will, once you fill it out, you send it in to us, and we'll add it to our database and let you know that it's been added. Okay, so you'll complete your My Profile page, and you know, share information about you. If you're a district level administrator, you can choose to have district level access, which will help you later. And you can also add or manage your schools here. So this is where you're going to affiliate yourself with the different schools. And here's an example of what that might look like when you affiliate yourself with the schools. And if you enter in the zip code, all you have to do is just check which schools you're applying for, or you can choose to check them all. And then again, as I mentioned, if you can't find your school, there is a form to download and send it in to us. So once you've done all that, you are now ready to apply. And as I mentioned, you can apply for both grants, the 17-18 Game On grant or the 17-18 School Breakfast grant. You just can't apply for multiple breakfast projects for the same school. One project, one grant application for a breakfast grant, or one project, one application for the Game On grant. Once you've done, come here, you're going to choose which application you're going to do. Today we're focusing on breakfast, so we'll just continue to go in the breakfast direction. When you click on the 17-18 School Breakfast Grants, you will get this information will come up. You'll see two options: start an application for a single school or start an application for multiple schools. Should you want to be applying for multiple schools, I highly encourage you to make your life easier to click on Start an Application for Multiple Schools. The reason being is that many of the questions will autofill into all of the applications, saving you a lot of work. If you are just applying for one school, you can just start an application for a single school. But just make sure you think about what your plan is and choose accordingly. And we'll kind of provide tips on both of these as we move forward. Once you've selected how you're applying, you can then choose what school you're going to apply for. So if you only chose one school in your affiliation, you will only have one school listed here. If you have an entire district, for example, that comes up, you have to choose which schools you're applying for. So it will determine, you know, based on your affiliations, as well as if you're choosing multiple schools, you'll have multiple options. But if you've chosen only one, you will only be able to make one option here. So once you've done that, you will be able to enter in your application. Please note that there are multiple tabs across the top, and you'll need to answer all the questions on each tab. I'll talk a little bit about some tips in just a minute, but some of the things that you really will find is that there are questions that are required, and they are noted as required, and there are some questions that are optional, and again, they are noted as optional. But if you go to submit and there is an error, it'll let you know. The system will tell you. Tab 3, project summary, is missing information, and then you just have to navigate to that tab, go to and scan through to see if you're missing or did not answer a question on that page. All right. Now, notice what I have here in red. This is the biggest, most important tip I can provide to you is save often, save often, save often. If you're going from tab to tab, I would save it before you go to the next tab. We get many people who comment and contact us and say, oh, I walked away and I forgot to save, and I now no longer have everything that I entered. And that's a real bummer, and we know it is, and it's very frustrating for schools. Our system will time out if you are inactive over a period of time, and if you've been working for a long period of time and have not saved. It doesn't know the difference. So we encourage you to save often. That way, if for some reason something crashes, you're protected. And just remember, you're going to make sure you answer all questions on all tabs. If you're applying for the multiple schools, you will want to save often, but there's a button that says apply all answers. Don't click on that until you've answered all questions. Any question that shows up on your multiple school application will autofill into your grant applications. And if you have 10 or 20 schools you're applying for, it'll really help to save you time. So you want to wait to click on apply all answers until you've answered all questions. So once you've gone through and you've answered all the questions and you feel good about your character counts and all the answers are complete, you're going to hit submit. When you hit submit, you'll get a green banner that will say you have successfully submitted. If you get an error message, that error message must be resolved before you can submit. And it'll tell you, like I said, it'll tell you where that error is. And as you fix each error, you might have I would suggest you save, and then you can try to resubmit too to see if you're ready to move forward. So as I mentioned, you can go to our school grants page and find the applications. You're going to click on Apply Now. You're going to create your login. You're going to create your portal profile. You're going to affiliate with your schools, and I apologize for the phone ringing in the background. You're going to click on grants and see what grants are available, and then choose grant and begin your application. More tips. We highly suggest you use Google Chrome or Foxfire. The reason being is if you are working in Explorer, it does not work well, and our system is not very compatible. And we see most errors that come up, or most problems that schools have, is related to working in Explorer. You might want to contact, if you're working on a school computer, that it's the most up-to-date version. And if it isn't, you might want to work with your IT department to see if there's a more up-to-date version that you can be using, rather than older versions that tend to have some other glitches and problems. And as I mentioned, you're going to want to save often, going to answer all questions on all tabs, answer all required responses, and fixing your submitted or your errors and before you resubmit. And it'll, again, tell you when there are those problems. Now, there are some questions that have to do with evaluation, and some evaluations that you might want to be thinking about are related to student surveys. You could be doing, this should really not say physical activity tracker, since this is a breakfast grant. It might be collecting ADP for your breakfast and analyzing ADP. This grant is different than previous grants and different from the Game On grant. We're not asking you to tell us how much money you're going to spend around each project, but it really is around, you have funding, and it'll be, you can choose what you're going to use that funding for, but you don't have to tell us for the breakfast grant how you're going to use that funding. So if you're getting the $3,000 startup grant, you can choose what kind of equipment you might need, or what kind of cleanup materials you might need, and anything else you might want to use funding for. But you don't have to say, I'm going to spend $1,500 on a cart or $2,000 on a refrigerator, or whatever the case may be. We don't need it broken down into that level. You're just going to do a check list of all the different things that you might be using funding for. Funds cannot be used for, we talked about food earlier, and the funds can also not be used for staffing. So if you need additional staff to make your project sustainable, you'll need to pay for that out of your own budget and using our funds for equipment or other needs related to your project. We do pay out in 2 installments, 65% at the start of the project and 35% usually after the midterm in January, early February. If your project requires more funding than what our grant allows, you will have an opportunity to share how you're going to implement your grant, implement your project, and where else you're going to be getting the funding from. So maybe it's other grants, or maybe it's through your district that'll allow you to purchase the equipment that you might need that our grant might not cover. And as I mentioned previously, you're going to get the funding that you qualify for based on your project plan and your current level of participation. You do want to make sure your project demonstrates what you've indicated you want to do. So if you indicate you're going to do breakfast in the classroom and provide it free to all students, you want to make sure your project outlines that. And you don't have to go into all of the detail of the why around it, but more around the project that you want to implement. You can apply, as I've mentioned, for both a breakfast grant and a Game On grant. Be creative and, come up with things that are really going to make a difference at your school. Increasing breakfast participation is our goal, and if you need to be creative and create something that's new and different for you and your school, we want to see it. And then, so as you're working through your breakfast grant, you're going to want to make sure, you complete a couple of things. You want to make sure it's ongoing, that whatever you're doing is going to be something that is not a one-time or one-chance project. It's impacting a large number of students. And, if you're thinking, oh, I'm only going to do this in my kindergarten class, it's going to be hard for us to justify when, you're going up against a school that is going to reach 3,000 students. So, really be thinking about, can you sustain or can you roll this out to more students or all of your students is key. And is your project sustainable? If you're purchasing equipment, or you've already got an alternative project implemented previously, then we anticipate you're going to be using that equipment for years to come. So that's part of the sustainability of a project. And then from there, we don't want to see that you're just doing incentives for students, because incentives go away and when the funding goes away. So we really want to be able to see that you've kind of thought through your project. You really want to increase your participation, and here are the ways that you're going to do that. So we have some application timelines that are important that you know. Our applications are due Friday, April 7th. So when we talked earlier and we said, get started now, don't wait till the last minute, because if you get started earlier and you have questions, or you want to, get a staffer to help you, or you have some questions that need some more support, you have time to do that. But we do know that people live by deadlines, and that will be fast approaching. So, we have probably a good 7 weeks still to get your application in, and we encourage you to do that as soon as you can. Schools will be awarded around May 15th. So you will be getting a notification via email of your school's award notification. So as I mentioned, we have technical assistance that's provided from Action for Healthy Kids. We can help you on submitting an application. We can help you on submitting an approved application if you take advantage of our resources. We have content-specific webinars. We're going to be doing webinar coming up in March on breakfast after the bell, which would mean, something that breakfast is served after school has started. We offer monthly newsletters to our funded schools. We offer expert assistance from both our national and state staff as well as our state level volunteers. We can help connect you to local resources for additional support. We provide trainings for both school wellness as well as for school breakfast, and so you can take advantage of those training opportunities. We can help you with evaluating your creating evaluation measures as well as communication efforts. So we will be providing with press releases and templates and ways to celebrate the work that you're doing and the things that are happening at your school. We also have in many of our states state coordinators. So we will be providing you with state coordinators that you can contact after the webinar, and so that way if you need to have a little bit more connection, I know Christina had mentioned that some people were looking for more guidance related to their application or their eligibility, and so the state coordinators or myself are available to assist you. So I'm going to pause. We have a couple of minutes really quick. I know Christina's been fastly answering questions, and I just want to see if there is any general question that needs to be answered that would benefit the group. Christina?
Yeah, there was I tried to get to everyone's question, so I apologize if I didn't get to yours. I was frantically trying to type. I did get this last one come through. It said, what is the amount for the Alternative Breakfast Project?
Great, good question. So on that grant, it's multiple schools. It's $2,100 per school, and I'll make sure to add that to the slide, and you will get the slide deck following. And so if you come in with 10 schools, it's $2,100 per school, so it's $21,000 in funding and promotional materials that will be sent to you. And that is depending on at least 5 or more schools. Any other questions, Christina?
I just have some other questions coming through about best practices, how to offer free breakfast at no cost, just looking for resources. So I think that's sort of beyond the scope of what we can talk about today, but what I've been encouraging everyone to do is to get in touch with either you or I after the webinar, and so that we might be able to have more of those one-on-one conversations with people and also with the state coordinators.
Absolutely. So one of the things when I send out the email that comes out tomorrow, I'll make sure that my information is included. And in addition, all of the questions will be saved in our resources, and I can follow up with you as well, and know that if I haven't gotten back to you by early next week, you can reach out to me too, and I'll make sure that if we need to schedule a time to talk or just answer something via email, we can do that. So thank you for your interest in our grants, and we hope that you will take advantage of all the resources that are available to you, and really encourage you to make a difference in your schools, both whether it be physical activity and nutrition related or breakfast related or both. And there could be different people involved in both of those projects. And if you're not already following us, I highly encourage you to do that as well, because we have a ton of resources, free tips, free exciting things that are happening, whether it be around holidays and school classroom parties, or things that might be going on in your school that you can really be able to share with others in your school, or kind of find fun ways to celebrate school wellness at your school. So we have a Facebook page, we have a YouTube page where all of our recordings are housed, as well as Pinterest and Instagram. So take advantage of those at your school and follow us as well. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, Christina, for answering those questions. And we look forward to working with you on your application as well as in the year to come.
Have a great day and enjoy this great weather. Have a good day.